Governor Delbert Hosemann. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay?
We're awake now.
Oh, geez. I was listening to a couple of things on air, and I was thinking, I had heard earlier, the buzz now for the football game tomorrow. Some of the national buzz is between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Ole Miss and Alabama.
Right.
That if Alabama loses to Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin is going to get an offer from back at USC again. So
I think he's been there and done that.
Yeah,
he's got a lot better.
I think the point was that they would welcome him back with open arms, and he may get an offer from
I don't know.
I thought this never stops, does it?
I never liked USC, still don't, and I don't think they've got anything to do with any kind of common sense.
My thought was
they fired Ogeron, Kiffin, about half the SEC coaches we got now went through USC.
That's exactly right. For him to go back to the high tax state of California.
Oh yeah, everybody's leaving. He'll be going one way.
That's it. You got to figure that into the cost. You also got to figure in the cost of living beside the taxes itself.
Absolutely.
The overall cost of living. So
actually, and then of course, if the current administration stays around in the next 2 years, it'll be a foreign country. So whatever. Alabama's got a freshman quarterback.
Yeah.
Paul. Now, freshman quarterback like Corral, as good as he was, when he played Arkansas, he threw like 4 interceptions last time. I mean, that kind of stuff happens, to freshmen. So I'm not giving up on that the University of Mississippi will be very competitive in that.
I think it'll be a good game.
It's
one of those that you kind of get the feeling the way it starts may be the way it ends. So hopefully it'll start pretty good. What time is the game on?
It's going to be tomorrow evening, I think, and I haven't looked at the time, but I definitely want to watch that. And I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of points. Is it 2?
Well, I know it's not anytime soon because Houston's sitting here. So if he has to leave, and I think he is leaving right after the show. So
I noticed a motorhome out there.
All right, let's talk politics here.
Yes, sir.
Where are we, first of all, with the special session? Because the governor said that the latest he said was it'll be sooner than later. Are there some, I'm getting some words that there are some members of the House and Senate, specifically the House, who may be having some problems with this?
I don't know about that. I've been on the phone with the gamut of from the Legislative Black Caucus and conservatives here in the last few days. We don't have any problems in the Senate. There are nuances.
So you think if the vote was done tomorrow that you would no problem at all as far as the Senate is concerned?
It will pass, I think, when he does call us a session. And our staff was meeting with some of their staff yesterday with some issues and questions and additional things they wanted to look at. There's an appropriations bill, and it goes with this, Paul. You remember, all appropriations have to start in the House. So in order to pay for all of the things that we've got to do, there'll be an appropriations bill that also goes along with that. And
how much are we talking about here?
Oh, in Arkansas, I believe they were about $30 million positive so far, and they hadn't completed a full year. Other places were generating $50 or $60 million a year. The expenses, as it stands right now, Commissioner Gibson would have some expenses. I think he put in $2.7 million, but I looked at his budget. He had like $500,000 in there for aerial surveillance. Well, of course, it's going to be indoors, so that probably wouldn't be needed. And Dr. Dobbs has talked a lot about his staffing not being very, very great. We want to fully staff this. We want it to be a very tight medical marijuana. That's what people voted on.
But to launch this industry in the state, the taxpayer is going to have to pay for it. What do you think the bill is going to be? I understand.
No, that's false.
Recoup that.
The taxpayer is not going to pay for anything.
Well, they got to put the seed money in. Where's it going to come from?
Well, I'll tell you what. Now, just think about this, Paul.
Right.
Where are you going with this?
We're
going to have to put a few $100,000 up here, or a couple $1 million to get everything started. But we're going to collect like $30 or $40 million.
That was my question. My question was, what's it going to cost?
The net is very positive.
That wasn't my question. My question was, what is it going to cost the taxpayers
Nothing.
to launch this ultimately?
To launch it. Yeah, the seed money. Oh yeah. I think from between now and when we come in January. There's an IT function that most of these other states do use that Dr. Dobbs wants. Dr. Dobbs sent me a note the other day. He was very nice, had a couple of changes on it. He wanted to extend to 120 days from 90 days to get started. So that'll put us really into late this year and early next year to do that. And he didn't have any press conferences or anything, so I think everything he's done has been wonderful. So we're very attuned to that. I would say it's a few $1 million to get it started, but clearly the people who use medical marijuana and need it will end up paying for the state to do that. And the other thing, Paul, that you're not focusing on that I have been, is what does this do to our mental health and our drug addiction programs? Now, our drug courts have functioned, but they need some help. I met with our mental health people and our human services people. They anticipate that we will have people that matriculate from this, whether you believe it's a starter drug or whatever they call it. There will be people that have issues with that, and we need as a state to be prepared for that. So we're at the point now we're going beyond this. Once this occurs, which apparently it will, once it occurs, then what happens to our people and what's our economics later on? So some of these fees that we're talking about in taxes will be used to keep people healthy.
We're building in drug abuse with this.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody, I just don't believe that it just is going to be, nobody's ever going to take this to a more serious drug. I just don't believe that.
You've read this thing and your staff has read it over. Are there any parts of this that you, when you go in, and again, this is a draft, so
yes,
when
sir.
you guys are called in, you can start shaping it up into form. But what parts of it would you like to see maybe tweaked a little bit?
Well, we've spent a lot of time on this. I think Dr. Dobbs' recommendation that we extend a little bit to make sure he can get it up and running in a timely fashion, I think that's something that we ought to do. He also had some concerns about the content, the amount of this THC that's in the various gummies or whatever is done there, and I think that needs to be addressed clearly. And we want to make sure.
What was it? How much was that?
Oh, it was 30 in one, and I don't have it before me.
They're two different
They're two different areas.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, but it's in the bill, and I want to make sure that Dr. Dobbs and our medical teams that are satisfied that this is not, use my words, an overdose for someone that would lead to a group problem.
Is our levels that we set forth in this draft commensurate with surrounding states?
Actually, it's better. We picked.
You mean lower?
Lower, yes, sir.
Okay.
It is lower. We looked at the Vermont model, and Colorado and some of these that have gone before us are trying to get back to the number that we're using. They think they've over.
They think that may have caused some of the problems as far as drug overdoses.
They do, and in Oklahoma, they allowed them to plant outside. And in our testimony, we had 2 weeks of hearings, 2 days of hearings on this. The guy from Oklahoma, the senator that wrote it, said they were going to have to hire 150 more policemen just to stop the illegal drugs that were matriculating out of outside planting. So that drove us without question to make everything inside where we can take it from seed all the way to user with a computer program that works.
It's hard to get your hands around the availability of jobs that will happen. One that caught my attention was talking about there are going to have to be people out there to contract with or subcontract, whatever it happens to be, that would destroy some of the unused cannabis that is produced. Make sure that it is taken out of the market or something. And I have no idea where those jobs are going to come from. Are there people who already do that? Can they be moved into somebody else who's doing something like that?
It's like any other production, Paul. People that produce this expect it to be utilized. So you'll have some waste of this that didn't work or whatever, and that will be destroyed. But that's going to be a relatively minor amount here. Yeah. Most of it's going to be utilized.
Maybe a funeral home that's got an unused incinerator.
Whatever. But I think the unused portion will be minimal, let me put it that way. So I think we'll have, and we've allowed the cities and the counties to opt out. Paul, in Michigan, out of 1,000 cities, only about 180 of them, I think, actually allow marijuana to be sold.
Is that right?
Yeah, so it came, you'll find, I think, a lot of Mississippi counties and cities are not going to participate in it.
Do you know how many of those cities, do they have the petition, the referendum type of thing to get back in and opt in?
Not sure how they did, whether they do or not. Ours, we've given them 90 days, I think, for the city or the county to reject this, which is plenty of time to hold public hearings. I thought that was important, and people talk about it, and they'll make a decision. They can always opt back in, at a later date if they decide to do that. But, we're here because Mayor Mary Hawkins and was upset about this, and I think that she had a good right. We need to pay attention to what she said.
I want to ask you if you've had any communication with the governor and a couple of other things on medical marijuana, and there's some other things too as we spend some time live in the ballroom from the Jackson Country Club. This is the Sanderson Farms PGA event. The TV wraps on, I think you said 2 o'clock this afternoon, 3 o'clock. The live TV from the Golf Channel starts at 3 o'clock this afternoon. It is on. Take a break. Back in a moment. The governor's here. I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying that I don't understand why they went there. Come on. We probably had everything that they got there and more.
We do. Clearly, there's a number of different sites around Mississippi that would have qualified. For example, up near Benton County, we're having a lot of work done up there with distribution centers. There's a big new one in Madison. In any event,
do you know when that project was pitched, or was it pitched to us in the state?
I never saw that usually the governor and the MDA handle those things, and they're very quiet until such time as they actually need the incentive package. As you saw maybe in the paper, the governor of Tennessee is going to call the legislature in, and that's when we really find out what's going on.
Let me ask you about this, because I had a couple of people ask me, more than a couple. There is a little buzz that because of COVID, because the private sector is paying more, we are losing some talented people in state government, where now just even the PERS and some of the benefits are not matching to what the private sector can pay. And there's a little buzz that there might be some PIN classification changes. Is there anything to that?
Yes, absolutely. We had done a study required, I think, for the last 2 years. Kelly came over before the legislature budgeted office a week ago, Friday, and indicated that, yes, what he has done, he has stripped down the number of actual levels to about 20. And he's got 2 or 3 different designations. Information technology, of course, is its own. Then all other general state employees are one. And what they did was they compared all of the surrounding states. Our average compensation here is around $41,000. I think $41,000 for a state employee. And the other states are around 48, one's 50. I think Tennessee is 50, Alabama's 48,000 or whatever. Then he took the market rate in Mississippi itself, and he came up with a minimal amount that we would need to bring our people to market. It's about $23 million. We allocated a 3% raise last year, and so it won't be quite that 23. It'll probably be in the $15 or $16 million to bring our employees up to a minimum level. And then there's a market level, which would be where you'd be competitive with market, and we'll give our agency heads some latitude in their compensation on their budget amounts, so that they can bring people to market and don't lose them to the private sector, which a lot of people do.
That's a legislative mandate. They've got to do that in the next session.
Well, there's not a mandate, but we're going to do that. Yes, we are.
So it will be effective July 1st of next year.
Should be effective July 1st. I hadn't gone into the effective date, but yeah, we're planning for next year's budget, so I think it will go in. Right. There may be some things that happen before then.
Let me get back to medical marijuana. There was Jason White, the Speaker Pro Tem, was on with me, and we had a question that I did some follow-up on, and the question was, can a member of the state legislature, House or Senate, be voting on this, pushing this, and also be partaking in the industry, own a marijuana cultivating facility or a pod shop or whatever it happens to be? And he tells me that that has been prohibited in this bill.
That's correct.
And then I get word from several other people that may not be factual. There may be a walk-around by possibly inserting a spouse or brother-in-law or somebody like that. Do you know that clause, and have you guys
It was the member himself or herself that would vote on it that was prohibited in the statute as proposed at this point in time.
So a spouse could
I didn't really get into all of that.
Wouldn't it be kind of important? I mean, And let's just say the spouse does own it and it's in his or her name. That kind of negates that altogether, would it not?
Well, that depends if you stay married, I guess. I don't know. I'll have to take a look at that. I do know that was a position that the House took and is in the legislation right now as to whether or not your wife could own it or your grandmother or something. Yeah. I don't remember that actually.
But to me, doesn't that kind of just it's a ruse to the point where it's a little bit of an embarrassment to the state voters out here to think that walk around is something that they would be satisfied with.
Well, and so you're proposing that the spouses be excluded as well?
Yeah, why, certainly.
Okay, and anybody else? I mean, grandmothers?
I would think those would be the first two, and then after that you could talk about it. But if they had financial interest in either the husband or the wife, then seems to me that would be easy to write in a clause, just as the current language is.
Well, I think that's perfectly acceptable. When we come in, hopefully next week sometime, when the governor calls us in, we'll put that in there. We'll put the Gallo Amendment on it. It'll pass on the Senate.
I don't want to have anything to do with it, but I'm just saying that we talk to a lot of people in the state, and I think that as far as the voters are concerned, that for instance, you talk about Joel Baumgar. I mean, Baumgar, if he could assign that to somebody else.
Well, I mean, we got 52 senators and 122 representatives, so it's going to apply to everybody. Right. I don't know this really singling out any more.
Well, I'm not singling him out. The only reason I'm singling him out is because he's been pushing the whole industry.
Well, I appreciate this conversation, and I'll make a note, and when we have our guys in, we'll ask about that particular issue.
Let's march on to anything else on the bill, and you have no idea when he's going to call this.
We do not. Yesterday, their staff from the governor's office exchanged some information with our staffs about some calls that they had received about everything, and most of those, as I understand it from early this morning, meeting early before the show, were things that we like allowing opt-outing and distances from churches and things like that. I understood that a number of those had already been addressed in the bill, but we'll be going over those today, actually.
Lieutenant Governor with me. Is a stumbling block, or I shouldn't say stumbling block, is what's taking him maybe a little bit longer than he would like. What else to put into the bill as far as to add to the
No, I think the bill is exceptionally well drafted. It needs these nuances, like your spouse is excluded, the things like that. The nuances of this are being fleshed out now by the governor, and I sent a copy of this to Dr. Dobbs, Commissioner Gibson, all 52 of my senators like a week ago, and asked them to become familiar and call us back on changes and stuff. So we're in that process of picking little spots, but it's generally, I think it's well done, and I think we'll pass it very similar to what it is.
What I was talking about basically, and I should have made myself clear, is anything added to the call above and beyond that.
We asked for three things. We're short 2,000 nurses, and I'm very fearful. I've been to these, negative pressure rooms and ICU beds and stuff, and those people are just exhausted. And one hospital said they were having to pay $170 an hour to get somebody to come here and help people. And their normal pay is maybe $40 an hour, $40 or $50 an hour. And so there was such a dichotomy there that they really needed some help in retaining the nurses that are here. And these people are here, and they're being attempted to be lured away from Mississippi. And that means that those of you who are listening, you may not have somebody standing next to you when you're in the hospital. So we really think the retention effort is important to the state, and we've asked the governor to put that on the call, and it would be a significant amount of money. In addition to that, we've lost some of our first responders, and then our children, child abuse stuff that was funded by federal fines. Federal courts weren't meeting, so we don't have enough fines, and they've got a gap in covering our the ones that are being young men and women that are being trafficked. So there's a couple of things we thought. We're 90 days away from January, so we don't need to have another whole session, but there were a couple of things we thought the governor might want to consider.
The other thing was that course correction or that language correction as far as the Medicaid bill? That
came up in the discussions which we had with the governor about where they can't make any adjustments in the Medicaid reimbursement. I had talked to Drew Snyder at Medicaid, and he didn't think that was a good idea. There were things that moved around a lot in federal, and the federal law puts a lot of the numbers on how much you can charge for that, and it's moving. So I think we do need to give some latitude to the head of the Medicaid about making adjustments in compensation payments.
Only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
I know you were working on a lot of other things.
Oh, Paul. I mean,
we need a couple of hours.
If you invite me back for a whole show, we're going to address education. We had another hearing on that. We need to get our teachers up to something that works. We had. I want to be very careful about this adjective. I'm exceptionally disappointed in the test scores that we just got back from the Department of Education. Now, I'm not blaming anybody because it's COVID, but COVID really means it's a kid, it's a child, and those children are not. They are not meeting the standards for math. We went back in math and in English, and so we grilled them closely last Friday, and they're doing some. Bringing in extra teachers to try to bring our kids back up. I'm very concerned. Distance learning was a stopgap measure. We need our kids in school, and what happened was we had a very poor result. And there's telemedicine coming, tourism and parks, our infrastructure needs. We'll do an infrastructure bill this year, economic development and workforce development. We've got a laundry list that would. We're going to have a very good year, Paul.
Are you going to do would you push an infrastructure bill if an infrastructure bill is not complete?
Yes, I intend to have an infrastructure bill, whether they have one or not.
And we got to do this again soon, and need more time. But it's all I got.
That's really good to see y'all. Everybody come to the golf tournament. It's a phenomenal thing out here.